If you're looking for homelessness grants through your local Continuum of Care, you've likely heard about the CoC NOFO and wondered how it works. In less than 10 minutes, we'll break down the CoC NOFO. This video is not a substitute for reading the NOFO or working with your local CoC, but it hopefully helps you make sense of NOFO conversations. Let's start with key terms you'll hear during NOFO season. A Continuum of Care, or CoC, is a group of organizations that come together to coordinate homelessness services in a specific geographic region. A description of CoCs and their responsibilities can be found in the federal CoC program regulations. The CoC program, administered by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, is the largest federal grant program targeting homelessness. Through that CoC program, HUD works with CoCs to provide grants to local organizations. The Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO, is HUD's announcement that CoC program funds are available, along with the rules for applying. The CoC lead agency, also called the collaborative applicant, runs the NOFO process locally. They're responsible for submitting one unified application to HUD on behalf of the entire CoC. An applicant is an organization applying for funding, like a nonprofit, public housing agency, state, local government, tribe, or tribally designated housing entity. If an applicant applies for and receives a grant, they become a recipient. A recipient is the entity that has entered into a grant agreement with HUD. This is different than a subrecipient. Subrecipients receive HUD funding, but they receive it from a HUD recipient, not directly from HUD. Applicants submit project applications, a grant request for a specific project. They submit this application to the CoC before it even gets to HUD. In addition to project applications, there is also a CoC application. Unlike project applications, the CoC application is not a grant request. It's a set of narratives, data, and attachments that describe the performance of the CoC as a whole. The CoC lead agency submits the CoC application using information from applicants, CoC members, and other community partners. Project applications and the CoC application get wrapped up into what's called the consolidated application. This is the package the CoC lead agency submits to HUD on behalf of the CoC. The CoC program provides grants for numerous project types, also called components, including permanent housing, which includes both permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing, transitional housing, supportive services only, the Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS, CoC planning funds, and some other less common components. Each NOFO explains exactly which components are eligible that year and which components HUD is prioritizing. Let's get into how the NOFO works. You can think of the NOFO as HUD saying, here's how much money is available, what we will pay for, and how we will do it. The NOFO explains things like HUD priorities and thresholds, how HUD will score project applications, how HUD will score the CoC application, and how CoCs are required to run the NOFO process locally. In the NOFO or other publications, HUD tells each CoC the maximum amount of money it can apply for. This includes the annual renewal demand, or ARD, which is essentially the total amount of money a CoC would need to renew all existing grants. CoC bonus funds, which are used for new projects, DV bonus funds for projects serving survivors of domestic violence and other situations, and CoC planning funds for CoC-wide planning activities. So how do agencies request grants through the NOFO? Well, even though HUD releases the NOFO, your local CoC runs the application process in your community. So you read the NOFO, then you follow your local CoC's instructions, and you submit your project application to the CoC. One of the biggest mistakes new applicants can make is assuming the NOFO gives them all the guidance they need. It does not. There are two key things to know as a new applicant. First, the NOFO includes some information that does not apply to project applications. While you should understand the NOFO's priorities and how HUD scores project applications, some NOFO sections are directed to the CoC lead agency, not to project applicants. Second, The NOFO does not contain everything you need to know. It won't tell you how your CoC is running the local competition, what local deadlines you must meet, or what additional requirements or priorities your CoC might have. Successful applicants pay attention to both the NOFO and their local CoC's instructions. Most CoCs have separate application processes for renewal projects, which are currently funded, and new projects, which are not currently funded. Some CoCs require all applicants to submit applications directly in eSNAP's, HUD's grant management system. Other CoCs collect applications outside of eSNAP's and only ask projects to enter into eSNAP's later if they select that project to move forward in the competition. After you submit your project application, the CoC rates it and decides whether it moves forward. Then it ranks all projects in order from highest to lowest priority, creating a ranked list. HUD requires CoCs to divide that list into two sections, called Tier 1 and Tier 2. HUD tells the CoC how much money can go into Tier 1. The Tier 1 amount is important because it determines how much funding the CoC can control locally. CoCs put their highest priority projects in Tier 1 up to that HUD-specified amount. If the CoC places your project in Tier 1, it is very likely to be funded because HUD generally selects Tier 1 projects for funding so long as they pass basic eligibility and threshold requirements. The CoC puts the rest of the projects in the Tier 2 section, which is more competitive. Instead of simply funding projects if they meet basic eligibility, HUD scores every Tier 2 project. And they don't just look at your project application or where your CoC ranks your application. They also look at the CoC application and how the CoC application scores compared to other CoCs nationally. And they look at other HUD priorities for that year. This means your project's funding doesn't only depend on your project application and your ranking, it also depends on the performance of your whole CoC and the extent to which your project aligns with national priorities. For that reason, CoC performance plays a huge role in whether your project application is competitive. Again, especially for Tier 2 projects, HUD looks at the CoC application and how the CoC ranks against all CoCs nationwide. A stronger CoC means better odds for every project located in that CoC's region. You can help improve the CoC application score by strengthening your CoC performance throughout the year, like working towards strong housing outcomes. You can also help your CoC lead agency prepare the CoC application by providing data and narrative information. The higher the CoC application scores, the more likely it is for your project and your community to receive funding. After the CoC completes the rating and ranking process and that tiered list, the CoC lead agency prepares and submits a package to HUD in eSNAPs. This is called the Consolidated Application. It includes all project applications in ranked order, also called the Priority Listing, and the CoC application. Then you wait for HUD to review the submissions. If HUD selects your project for funding, HUD enters into a grant agreement directly with your organization. At that point, you become a HUD recipient. As a HUD recipient, you still work closely with your CoC. You participate in CoC processes and follow their policies, standards, and performance expectations. And when HUD releases the next NOFO, you go through the process again. Keep in mind, NOFOs can change each year, so read the NOFO carefully and follow your CoC's instructions. Also think about getting involved with your CoC now. CoCs do much more than run the NOFO process. Even if you're not applying, or you apply but you don't receive a grant, you can still be part of the CoC's efforts to end homelessness. And a final reminder, this overview is just a starting point. Read the NOFO and connect with the local CoC in your region.